𝐒𝐒𝐑, the superhero equivalent of a wet noodle, somehow finds herself as the chosen one to take down Stigma, a villain so delusional he thinks the world can run on dreams. With the help of a sultry senpai superhero who's hotter than a freshly baked bread, 𝐒𝐒𝐑 takes on a challenge that's way heavier than her braver meter can handle. Around the middle of the 21st century, all war had ceased on Earth, and superheroes became common worldwide with funny names and costumes. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 was on the train rehearsing her speech for an event, so engrossed she didn't realize the train had stopped for her to get out. When she stood up, she clumsily bumped into a man, and she was so frightened by the human contact that she ran away. At the venue, 𝐒𝐒𝐑 goes on stage shaking like a leaf, barely able to speak as if hot dumplings were in her mouth, and the audience discourages her more, all except one little boy who cheers for her. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 runs off the stage as the MC introduces Heartman, another hero. In her dressing room, she pukes her guts out, shaken by the 2 minutes of muttering she did on stage, so her fish-like companion Shrimpy comes out of her back to tell her she needs to get used to people looking at her because it's been over a month since she became a superhero. Just then, 𝐒𝐒𝐑 hears cries for help coming from the amusement park, so she rushes to the scene to save the people on the malfunctioning ride. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 tells them they're safe now as she was going to rescue them all, and made to start with the first girl who refuses to tell her to start with someone else, or even her brother, who is 𝐒𝐒𝐑's biggest fan, so she does just that. As she rescues the second to the last person, leaving the first girl as the last person to save, the ride goes out of control and breaks apart. 𝐒𝐒𝐑, alarmed, rushes to catch the cart with the girl in it and does so just in time, but unfortunately the girl is badly wounded. On the news, reporters say that 𝐒𝐒𝐑 failed to save the girl, and debates go on questioning the concept of heroes while she cowers at home, refusing to do anything or save anyone despite pleas from Shrimpy. She goes over what ifs and just whines about everything, like a baby. Pepesha, a Russian hero nicknamed Spirit, appears in front of 𝐒𝐒𝐑 telling her not to be too hard on herself. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 is surprised that the superstar hero is in her room and asks why she's there. Pepesha says she heard about 𝐒𝐒𝐑's self-isolation and understands it because she used to be a dumb kid who believed getting everyone drunk would bring world peace, but that wasn't the case, and not everyone can be saved. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 asks the older woman her real reason for coming, but she lives up to her stupidity and says she doesn't remember, and this leaves her disappointed. Pepesha gets called for an emergency and tells 𝐒𝐒𝐑 she'll be back when she remembers why she came, leaving the sad superhero to reflect on everything. Later, at a bookstore, 𝐒𝐒𝐑 overhears some boys talking about her mockingly, so she runs out, reflecting on her life choices, when she notices sirens going towards a burning building and rushes after. The firefighters are yelling that there are people stuck in the building, but 𝐒𝐒𝐑 is more like a brick wall at that moment. On the other side, a little boy rushes forward, insisting on saving the people despite not being a hero, and as he tries to enter, a piece of the building comes tumbling down, about to crush him. Luckily, the hero finally moves and saves him just in time. She changes into her suit and goes into the building, still acting like a scaredy cat. After a failed attempt at a cool entrance, 𝐒𝐒𝐑 listens for any survivors, and she hears a baby crying, so she goes after the sound till she finds a baby beside his unconscious mother. She picks both of them up and tries to fly out of the building, but she's as good as a chicken taking flight and messes it up. Fortunately, Pepesha shows up to save all of them. After the paramedics take away the survivors, Pepesha and 𝐒𝐒𝐑 are talking, with Pepesha praising 𝐒𝐒𝐑 for being brave again, but 𝐒𝐒𝐑 keeps being shy. Just then, a crowd of fans sees Pepesha, so they rush to get autographs, while 𝐒𝐒𝐑 only gets one fan, who is the little boy from earlier and still the one she saved at the park. He thanks her both times and tells her his sister is out of the hospital, and she is finally happy with the additional news that the baby's mother is also safe and sound. Pepesha tells her she remembers why she visited the last time and transports them to space, where 𝐒𝐒𝐑 has temporary brain damage. Pepesha explains it's all the hero's secret hideout, while a strange woman walks out to introduce herself as the hero's supervisor of Earth, Heavenly Empress Unilord. She says she'd rather be called Unichi. Unichi tells her the real reason heroes were put on Earth is because of a dark place in everyone's heart they hide, and agents of evil want to take advantage of it. The heroes are beacons of hope to protect the souls of their world. The next day, 𝐒𝐒 is at school thinking about the revelation when her teacher introduces a new student, 𝐒𝐔𝐁𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏𝐍𝐿, who just happens to be the girl she saved last at the amusement park. The girl sits next to 𝐒𝐒, oblivious to who she is. At school, the kids are bombarding 𝐒𝐒 with questions about her former private school. While 𝐒𝐒 eavesdrops, a teacher calls 𝐒𝐒 to the faculty office while 𝐒𝐒 just watches her leave. Shrimpy comes out of 𝐒𝐒's backpack when she's outside, wondering how the new girl feels about her, and 𝐒𝐒 freaks out, but he tells her he's there to give her the homework she forgot. She walks into the school building only to see 𝐒𝐒 crying and turns into a ketchup bottle while asking the new girl what's wrong. The girl tells 𝐒𝐒 she's fine and she's glad her first friend is kind. 𝐒𝐒 takes 𝐒𝐒 to the nurse's office and she's given painkillers. After the nurse leaves, she tells 𝐒𝐒 she looks like the superhero 𝐒𝐒, which sends 𝐒𝐒 into a frenzy, while 𝐒𝐒 keeps talking about how when the hero saved her, she was relieved. 𝐒𝐒 asks the new girl if she has resentment for the hero, but 𝐒𝐒 says she's actually grateful. This makes her 𝐒𝐒 to turn into a crying baby mess and run out of the nurse's office into the toilet to clean her tears. Once left alone, 𝐒𝐒 is overcome by a dark presence that alters her heart into darkness. And when 𝐒𝐒 returns, she meets a new version of 𝐒𝐒 that tells her she'll destroy all of the cages the hearts of people have been trapped in. 𝐒𝐒 cries in pain as she mutates into a monstrous being, and then 𝐒𝐒 notices a boy behind her. She asks the boy what he has done with her friend, and he tells her he has merely brought out her heart because it was suffocated with rage and pain. 𝐒𝐒 is confused, but Shrimpy tells her to remember what the Unilord told her, that the strange mutation is the manifestation of her heart, and she needs to fight the strange boy who brought it out. Shrimpy says 𝐒𝐒 probably has hatred for someone, and 𝐒𝐒 feels like it's her. 𝐒𝐒 apologizes to 𝐒𝐒 for putting her in danger, but 𝐒𝐒 tells her it's not her fault. 𝐒𝐒 starts to tell 𝐒𝐒 about how all her life she's needed saving, putting others at risk. From her parents when she was young until date. 𝐒𝐒 figures out that 𝐒𝐒 hates herself and transforms. She helps 𝐒𝐒 do some self-reflection and work through her trauma. 𝐒𝐒 lets her release all her anger at her taking a beating and refusing to fight back. Finally, 𝐒𝐒 starts to turn back to normal, and 𝐒𝐒 removes the ring from her finger. Later, 𝐒𝐒 apologizes to 𝐒𝐒 for what she did earlier, but 𝐒𝐒 tells her to just be kind going forward. 𝐒𝐒 is at the mall trying to disappear into herself because she's waiting for 𝐒𝐒 in public, and when her friend finally arrives, she barely manages to stop herself from digging a hole to hide in. The two girls go from place to place, and 𝐒𝐒 is having fun while 𝐒𝐒 looks like what the cat dragged in sick from being in public. They talk about the incident at school, and 𝐒𝐒 tells 𝐒𝐒 she's brave. They hear a little boy crying and go to ask him what's wrong. He tells them he can't find his parents, and they start helping him find them. 𝐒𝐒 successfully gets the little boy to stop crying, impressing 𝐒𝐒. Finally, they find his parents, reuniting them. The boy goes back to the two girls to thank them for helping him, and 𝐒𝐒 tells him to keep being nice to everyone. As they leave, 𝐒𝐒 tells 𝐒𝐒 she admires her kindness and that they aren't really different. They're still exploring the mall when they see a Stardust poster, the only hero to reveal his identity publicly. Just the sight of the poster sends 𝐒𝐒 into a babbling mess. At that moment, Spirit calls 𝐒𝐒, telling her the two girls have been summoned by Unilord as well as Stardust. The news almost turns 𝐒𝐒 into a spaceship herself the way she's blown away. Spirit takes them to space, and 𝐒𝐒 once again finds herself talking like there's hot soup poured on her just looking at the Earth from space. Spirit calls them to follow her to Unilord, who will debrief them on the topic they are to discuss. She tells the two younger girls that the man who brought out 𝐒𝐒's heart is called Stigma. They reach Yunichi's room, and she offers them soup. As they eat, 𝐒𝐒 keeps acting like a crazed fangirl, asking for pictures and everything. Just as they finish taking pictures, Stardust appears, which makes 𝐒𝐒 turn red. They all sit at a table as Yunichi addresses them about the recent events and what they've gathered so far. Star-Lord asks what they want him to do, and she tells him she wants him to fight Shy in order to prepare her for Stigma, and Shy agrees to it, finally acting like a serious hero. They move to an arena to duel, but before they start, Stardust tells Shy that her strength is as good as what's in her heart. Shy trembles like a wimp, but is still determined to fight to prove herself. The duel starts with the rule that if Shy is able to hit Star-Lord's face even once, she'll win, but all her blows aren't affecting him in any way because he has an unwavering, unemphatic heart. He hits her, and she falls like a deck of cards, but despite all this, she doesn't give up. She stands up at the sound of Koshikawa's voice with newfound power that still proves useless in the face of Star-Lord. Suddenly she makes a comeback when she calls him kind. Star-Lord's heart starts to waver, but he is still unbelievably strong, and she faints before she can defeat him. Star-Lord declares that Shy is not cut out to be a hero, but he'll let her have the win and keep her hero status. Later, Spirit finds Star-Lord self-reflecting, and she thanks him for at least preparing Shy for battle, then proceeds to tell him she hates him while he walks away. At the infirmary, Shy wakes up to a hero with a loose cannon for a mouth who tells her Koshikawa exhausted herself by being a huge crybaby. Shy asks who the stranger is, and this makes her burst out with rage over not being known by a newbie. The woman finally introduces herself as the Black Cross nurse, Lady Black, but still Shy doesn't know, which makes her almost burst a vein in anger, and immediately Dr. Schwartz, Germany's hero, appears to be trying to get the situation under control. Dr. Schwartz explains to her that he and the angry woman were Black Cross heroes, whose sole purpose was to represent those in the medical field, and Lady Black's power was healing people. Lady Black says Star-Lord left a message of congratulations to Shy, and she becomes excited before slipping into self-pity. Lady Black tells her she doesn't recognize her as Japan's hero because she's a wimp, a crybaby, and a chicken can fight better than her. The older woman emphasizes that Shy was no hero and didn't deserve to be called one, then leaves while Dr. Schwartz stays for a bit, encouraging her. When they finally leave, Koshikawa wakes up to start yelling about how amazing the wimpy hero was to try to fight at least. Back on Earth, they have to go their separate ways home, but before that, Shy pathetically apologizes for being a failure with waterworks coming out of her eyes and her face turning tomato red. Once home and eating dinner, Shy sees on the news that Stigma has struck again. Shy is at a bookstore freaking out about having to call the attention of an employee when an old woman comes out, and it turns out to be an old friend of her grandfather's. They make small talk, and Chihiro tells Shy she's been suffering from back pain. Shy asks if there's anyone helping the old woman, but she replies no, saying that she's been alone since her husband passed. Back at her house, Shy is beating her already rock-bottom self-esteem even lower over not being able to help Chihiro, the shopkeeper's back pain, when Lady Black rings the bell. When Shy opens the door, she is confused about the identity of the woman before her, and this makes Lady Black explode with rage and red-hot embarrassment. She reintroduces herself, telling Shy she's only there because she has to make sure she's not still limping around like a wounded gazelle. Shy finally lets her in to do a follow-up checkup, and during it, Shy gets an idea of how to help Grandma Chihiro, but Lady Black blows hot at Shy's request and still ends up at the shop, asking to take a look at the old lady. Lady Black helps the lady, and to Shy's surprise, she offers to join Shy and Grandma Chihiro on the hike, and although Shy is as fit as a sack of rice, she agrees. From the meeting point for the hiking destination, Shy struggles to keep up with the other women, stopping every millisecond to catch her breath like the lazy loser she is, but she somehow manages to make it to the top long after them. Once they got to the top, Shy asked why Lady Black said she once wanted to prove people wrong by going hiking every day. Lady Black removes her legs to the surprise of Shy and tells her a story about how, growing up, she used to live on the mountainside, so people thought she couldn't hike just because she lost her legs in an accident. She explains that she did it to prove them wrong, and after her story, Shy tries to be all mushy, but Lady Black pushes her away, calling her a stupid weakling. Just then, Grandma Chihiro tells them she's ready to start heading down. Back at the bookstore, they go their separate ways, but before that, Shy asks Lady Black to coach her on being a superhero. The next day, Shy continues to be a failure, trying to use her powers before school. Shrimpy tells her it's time to go to school, and at school she sees her best friend in a new uniform. All through school she keeps messing everything up worse than even Akataru in Fire Forces, then proceeds to cry a river about it. She stays on campus after school, walking around the halls, when she stumbles on a scary girl who tells her she wrote the fire signage. Shy's inability to say no lands her in a calligraphy club with a handsome boy and a scary girl. There she learns to write too, and how the art requires heart. She rushes home as something clicks for her and practices calligraphy till her fire comes back. Stigma soliloquizes on how heroes are evil and must be destroyed before shattering a rock to reveal a woman whom he tells to return the world to how it used to be with him. Meanwhile, Shy is at school telling Koshikawa she has started to master her flame power with the help of Peppersha and Plitz, when Shrimpy tells her she's been summoned by Unilord. In outer space, Unilord tells the heroes they are in a state of emergency on a request to mobilize from an international organization. Although there isn't a lot of information, Shy and Spirit will be sent to the North Pole, where they'll meet up with another superhero to investigate. Unilord declares, if the two notorious slackers don't investigate quickly and efficiently, their snack privileges would be sliced away like a poorly made sushi roll. When they land at the North Pole, they go to the Arctic base, where they see Sleeping Beauty and a low-budget prince trying to wake her up. Spirit manages to wake him up in a fright, and he introduces herself as Mina Long, or Mingli, China's hero. Inside the base, a man explains where the emergency signal came from and debriefs them on their mission before they finally board the helicopter. During their flight, Mingli explains that he was terrified when he had to fight Stigma because he's an unmanly, terrible fighter, while Shy didn't even fight him before defeating him. Shy tries to encourage him by saying he doesn't need to be manly since he's a girl, but this sends Mingli's head rockets through the roof like a launched spacecraft, his face beet red with embarrassment. Peppersha tells her off for assuming he was female, and Shy apologizes. Suddenly the crew is blown out of the air abruptly and is attacked by a woman with ice powers. The heroes are completely unaware of who this person is and can see she's not under the influence of any ring, but they have no choice but to counter her attacks. In the middle of everything, Shy still has time to be a spineless Sally. Peppersha manages to pin the woman down, questioning her, and she says she's Tzveta. She tells them she was brought there to wait for the heroes, and if she defeated them, she could be warm. Peppersha understands they've been led into a trap and asks Shy to contact Unilord immediately. Tzveta catches the heroes off guard by saying Shy has been like a headless chicken the whole battle, which is just like Peisha, and this catches Peppersha off guard enough for Tzveta to land a deadly blow, striking her out of battle and off her body. Shy retaliates with her fire abilities, but the strange woman is unfazed, and the battle continues until Mingli uses his sleep-inducing power on her. While Shy goes to rescue Peppersha from her ice prison, Stigma shows up to collect Tzveta, but not before declaring that he and his people are Amarari Rukus, which means the ones who dream. Back at their base in outer space, the heroes debrief Unilord on everything that happened, and she is shocked that he had been building his own army without them knowing. Unilord apologizes for sending them to a trap, and Lady Black calls Shy to explain she's done treating Peppersha, so they all head to the infirmary to check how she's doing. Peppersha tells them she's fine, but can't stop thinking about Tzveta, who called her Pesha, a name only those closest to her know. She says that apart from that, she noticed the Amarara Rukus are all children, but Unilord tells her that it's too early to jump to conclusions as they can't afford to miscalculate or underestimate them. Unilord concludes that they must do research and calls Shrimpy to bring Koshikawa into the infirmary, saying she is their secret weapon against Stigma. They all go back to the control room where Unilord tells them she's been conducting research on the ring they recovered from Koshikawa, which led them to the discovery that it's a piece of Stigma's own heart, which connects any wearer's heart to his to mutate them into vengeful creatures. On hearing this, Koshikawa tells them she remembers that she saw his heart in hers and the way he viewed the world. Koshikawa says she saw people's shadows hand in hand, creating a ring, which sounds to them like he's aiming for world peace, but it's too absurd for them to take seriously. She also mentions that Stigma is extremely childlike, as if he refuses to grow. Unilord tells everyone that with the information they've gathered, they can manage to predict Stigma's next move. 𝐶𝐶 tells Unilord she is still plagued with questions about the identity of 𝐶𝐒𝐑 because she's almost like the younger version of herself. While she's talking, 𝐶𝐶 stumbles and almost falls, and the women gather to dot on her, asking her to go home to rest, telling her when she recovers, they'll properly investigate the girl. Before she leaves, 𝐶𝐒 talks to 𝐶𝐶 privately about the 𝐶𝐒𝐑 situation, and the older woman says she has a lot of conflicting feelings. Suddenly, 𝐶𝐶 zooms in on 𝐶𝐒's face with little breathing room, making 𝐶𝐒's brain and mouth go on vacation for a few minutes. Days later, 𝐶𝐒 has a stage performance to do to boost her popularity, but she doesn't want to do it. She eventually agrees with Shrimpy, and at the mall, she's given a ridiculous outfit to play an anime character. She's whining about how miserable she is when the mall representative earlier comes to ask for a favor, which lands her on a bigger stage with more children watching and taking questions from them. A little boy comes up to them and accuses her of being a sellout, and other children bully him away. 𝐶𝐒 goes after him to console him, but he says he only recognizes 𝐒𝐒𝐍𝐊 as his one and only hero, and then his balloon flies away. Luckily, 𝐶𝐒 retrieves it for him, telling him that when it comes to what you like, it doesn't matter if you're a boy or girl. The child tells him that's what 𝐒𝐒𝐍𝐊 said, and she's really the one. Later, a tired 𝐶𝐒 waits for her special gifts only for the mall attendant to bring a Blu-ray box set, and her heart breaks at the sight of DVDs instead of food, but she accepts it. Koshikawa escorts 𝐶𝐒 to the airport and they go through a checklist for her trip to Russia, with Shrimpy till it's time to board. When she gets there, she walks through the streets just thinking about her mission to investigate 𝐶𝐶's family to get to the root of who 𝐶𝐒𝐑 is. She meets up with the older woman, who says she's all healed, but really she's drunk. They continue to walk to the place 𝐶𝐶 grew up so they can access photo albums. 𝐶𝐒, who likes the sound of her own voice, keeps talking all the way there. The place is an orphanage, and they're welcomed by a man 𝐶𝐶 calls Mr. 𝐒𝐔𝐿. He tells her everyone is waiting for her, and the kids all rally around 𝐶𝐶 to greet her. Later, at the library, they are given photo albums to go through, and 𝐶𝐒 fills the time with questions about 𝐶𝐶's life at the orphanage, which 𝐶𝐶 answers. They finally find some pictures of 𝐶𝐶, and 𝐶𝐒 points out that she actually looks a little bit like 𝐶𝐒𝐑 when a picture of young 𝐶𝐶 and her mother falls out, prompting her to talk about how she looks very much like how her mother used to be at the time. Soon, it's lunchtime, so they go to eat lunch where they see Natalia, an old staff member from when 𝐶𝐶 was a young child, and they drink together. They also get Natalie to talk about 𝐶𝐶's childhood, and she offers them her photo book to go through too. As they go through the photo book, they see a picture of young Natalie, and 𝐶𝐶 points out that the older woman used to be pretty unlike now. This prompts Natalie to start a play tumble with Koshikawa, trying to get her to take back that statement. 𝐶𝐒 looks at the photo book, remembering a long time ago when she was playing with her mates, and this strange girl came up to her to ask her to play, but 𝐶𝐒, frightened, didn't agree and ran back to her friends. 𝐶𝐒 calls 𝐶𝐶's attention to this, and they realize her mother looks like 𝐶𝐒𝐑. Before the two women can soak in the information about the person they might be fighting, might be 𝐶𝐶's supposedly dead mother. They hear a cry for help from outside where the children usually play. Once they hear it, they rush out of the orphanage to see the children running helter-skelter, very scared and shaken up. 𝐶𝐶 stops one of them to tell her what's going on, and the girl is barely able to tell them a strange girl froze one of the children. The heroes immediately know that it's 𝐶𝐒𝐑, so they don't even mind that Natalie and Dr. 𝐒𝐔𝐿 would know their secret. They suit up in front of them. 𝐶𝐒 rushes to melt the ice with her fire, only to reveal a crazy child that clearly wasn't an orphan in the home called Kufufu from Amarariruku. 𝐶𝐒𝐑 appears too, and her presence covers everywhere with darkness to claim it. 𝐶𝐒𝐑 tells the heroes that Stigma told her about a place within everyone's hearts that's impenetrable territory separate from reality, free from pain or suffering, only peace. She tells the heroes that the dark enclosure is the Amarariruku of her heart, where they are going to live forever. Stigma watches from afar as the area where the orphanage is sealed away from the human world, and although he doesn't understand why she chose it, he wishes 𝐶𝐒𝐑 luck in his mind and disappears. Back in the mini Amarariruku, 𝐒𝐒𝐑 tells the heroes she intends for the place to become heaven for them, but all the humans have passed out, unable to stay awake in 𝐒𝐒𝐑's heart, and the crazy lady says she would put them off their misery. On hearing this, 𝐒𝐒𝐑 tries to attack 𝐒𝐒𝐑, but her even more mentally unstable companion counters the attack. The clown Kufufu makes fun of 𝐒𝐒𝐑, saying she doubts the hero's laughs because of her frown lines, and that her sole goal is to make people laugh no matter the cost. Kufufu then starts to attack 𝐒𝐒𝐑 with ridiculous battle strategies, like a slap kick and blowing them up. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 punches the crazy woman but is met with a dramatic fake dying skit, which unnerves 𝐒𝐒𝐑 because she can't predict the girl's next move. Kufufu starts to offload toys from random parts of her body, but 𝐒𝐒𝐑 just watches, confused. Kufufu is offended because no one is laughing, and 𝐒𝐒𝐑 tells her she's doing well, but 𝐒𝐒𝐑 just asks the baby villain what she intends to achieve from everything, and the girl says, "To make everyone laugh, eventually, Amarariruku will make flowers bloom all over the world." 𝐶𝐵𝐵𝐶, sick of all the talk, grabs the two troublesome children and slams them ready to take on battle. Kufufu goes to take on 𝐒𝐒𝐑 one-on-one as ordered by 𝐒𝐒𝐑, but 𝐵𝐵𝐶 hits her in time to stall her. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 tells Kufufu she's disappointed in her, and this leads them to start going back and forth about 𝐒𝐒𝐑's coldness towards Kufufu. 𝐵𝐵𝐶 takes this opportunity to tell 𝐒𝐒𝐑 that they should evacuate the unconscious humans to prevent any major harm from coming to them. 𝐵𝐵𝐶 says she'll use her powers to carry the humans just beyond the Amarariruku, and she needed 𝐒𝐒𝐑 to be her lookout. Just as 𝐵𝐵𝐶 starts to fly towards the wall, the crazy villain duo spots her, and 𝐒𝐒𝐑 attempts to launch an attack, but 𝐒𝐒𝐑 is faster at countering. 𝐵𝐵𝐶 successfully goes through the wall only to come out through the other end of the wall, and 𝐒𝐒𝐑 explains that because she has rejected the outside world, anyone that touches her walls returns back to her. She explains that a person's heart has three components: the world, emotions, and memories. She was going to take a look at 𝐵𝐵𝐶's heart for her memories to complete her own. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 tries to step in but is held down by Kufufu. Even after using intense fire, the girl still latches onto the hero. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 starts to use the humans against 𝐵𝐵𝐶, controlling their bodies and words to break 𝐵𝐵𝐶's eagerness to return to the human world. But she's unwavered. She manipulated the humans to get 𝐵𝐵𝐶 angry so she could access her energy and, therefore, her memories. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 sees this and tries to tell 𝐵𝐵𝐶 to stay calm, but it's too late. She's angry and launches at 𝐒𝐒𝐑 once again, but this time she's not met with resistance. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 accesses 𝐵𝐵𝐶's memories, and flashbacks of her life are shown from the beginning, and 𝐵𝐵𝐶 realizes the person she's been fighting is her mother. In the flashbacks of 𝐒𝐒𝐑, as her actual self named Latana 𝐵𝐵𝐶's mother. The woman sees herself with the life of a struggling single mother, unable to find any good-paying job, each day becoming even more brutal than the next, with bills unpaid and food becoming a scarce commodity for her and her young daughter. The woman is slowly losing hope and faith in humanity, until one night she goes into a cake shop to buy something like that for her and her daughter for once, but she starts to leave when she sees it is way past the few coins she has. The kind storekeeper gifts her the cake on the condition she would come back to give a review on it. On her way back home with a finally hopeful heart, she is attacked by an angry man who takes the cake and throws her over the bridge so she drowns. 𝐵𝐵𝐶, who also sees these memories, finally understands what's going on. Her mother became the manifestation of the evil she experienced, and this breaks 𝐵𝐵𝐶's heart to the extent she unsuits. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 steps in to tell her friend's evil mother, Reincarnate, that she believes there's still hope in the world, but 𝐒𝐒𝐑 tells the wimpy hero she has completed her heart and cannot be stopped anymore. They start to fight, warm against cold, but for once, 𝐒𝐒𝐑 is actually putting up a good fight, unlike her usual headless chicken-like attacks, and 𝐒𝐒𝐑 is shocked by the amount of power the girl has. Meanwhile, 𝐒𝐒𝐑 starts using the same approach she used for Koshikawa when she had her heart exposed. She tells 𝐒𝐒𝐑 she understands her pain and desire to protect the one she loves, but the protection is coming without consideration for 𝐵𝐵𝐶's feelings. This enrages 𝐒𝐒𝐑, who tells 𝐒𝐒𝐑 to shut up because she is a child who knows nothing. She says she no longer cares about what happens to her or who cares about her because she'll endure any pain for the sake of her children. 𝐒𝐒𝐑 cries out 𝐵𝐵𝐶's name to 𝐒𝐒𝐑, telling the woman that her child is there because of love, which is the same selfless love she inherited from her mother. She tells Tzveta that Pepesha shares her love with everyone around her. And apart from learning how to be a drunkard, Pepesha also learned how to be empathetic with all the best qualities. Because of her admiration for her mother, Pepesha embodied spirit and also became a world-saving hero. Tzveta refuses to believe, saying all those are lies because she couldn't provide for Pepesha, so she has to make it never repeat itself again. Shai still stands her ground against Tzveta, while turning to Pepesha to beg her to stand up and tell her mother how she really feels, but Pepesha is like a sloth on Valium, taking her sweet time to meander down memory lane, reliving every tiny detail like a nostalgic ninja. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, Pepesha snaps out of her daydreaming and intervenes, saving Shai from certain exhaustion. Pepesha, once suited up again, goes up to her mother and starts by saying how she regretted that she was never good at saying how she felt because she was scared of the change the revelations would bring about. But she was happy after all these years she could finally talk about her feelings without holding back. Her mother tells her to stop because there's nothing she can do, but Pepesha is determined to tell her mother her heart by all means possible. She starts talking about a promise they made to each other when she was just a child, asking her mother if she remembered all those promises because, in a way, they were fulfilling one at that moment. Pepesha goes closer to her mother, trying to hold her hand, but Tzveta recoils back aggressively, saying she knows nothing about any promises, but Pepesha pretends she doesn't hear this. Shas goes on to beg her mother to tell her what kind of child she was to her all those years ago, and she made her mother feel. Just as Tzveta starts to soften, Kefufu comes out of nowhere like a big rat and latches onto the woman's back, telling her to remember what her true purpose is, and Tzveta finds new resolve to go on expanding her heart, trying to make a worldwide Amarariruku for all children. Shai holds on to Pepesha, reassuring her she was right there, and the two of them could definitely reach her mother if they combine their power. Tzveta builds walls upon walls, and the two heroes continue breaking them. Meanwhile, she starts to question the purpose of her quest to end the world, and then she starts to tap into her war memories once Pepesha successfully breaks all walls and hugs her. Pepesha, remembering a conversation she had with Natalie as a child about how her mother really wrote a letter proposing they become liver-destroying partners and drink alcohol together once Pepesha was an adult. Pepesha remembers from the day she read her mother's letters till date, she has never forgotten her mother or the love she gave her, and she became a hero because of that. Pepesha tells her mother she loves her, and just like that, it's over. She's her old self again, Lotana. But Kefufu is unwilling to stop, but Lotana sends her away as she also fades away, finally free from her nightmare. Before Lotana fully fades away, she tells them about how Stigma has the power to make others' dreams come true and make them into reality. He took advantage of Pepesha's wish to see her mother again, to make an angry version of her, and his sole purpose is to make a world full of only children, granting the Amarariruku powers that would allow them to fight the heroes. Before she finally fades, Lotana thanks Shai, calling her brave and a good friend for her daughter, then tells Pepesha she's proud of her. She tells the two heroes she believes they can save the world, then requests for that one last drink side by side. Pepesha is left in tears after Mother fades, but Shai tells her not to be sad, as there is more joy to come in the future. Then, as Pepesha makes to walk away, Shai notices a black ring in the same spot Lotana disappeared. Shai is swamped with fans for the first time, but she doesn't handle it well as Pepesha watches, amused. Natalia walks up to Pepesha to let her know all the kids inside were safe. Meanwhile, Dr. 𝐒𝐔𝐁𝐒𝐂𝐑𝐈𝐏 was still trying to check them properly. She goes on to say she can't believe Pepesha was a hero, but then again, she always knew she would be great because of her mother and how strong the woman was. Even as a child, she would never be a burden to other people, despite going through many hardships. Natalia tells Pepesha that as far as she was concerned, she was from a bloodline of heroes because even though her mother didn't have special powers, the woman was extraordinary. Shai, on the other hand, was finding it hard to fight off her little fans, losing yet another battle and needing rescuing. Shrimpy calls. Shai asking why she was off the grid and stating reinforcements have been sent, so Shai tells him the fight is over and they are safe. Star-Lord and Lady Black appear to see that the other two heroes had taken care of the threat, So Star-Lord tells them that they were at the superhero headquarters in space, with Unilord addressing the majority of the superheroes to inform them about the new Amarariruku threat, and telling them how they would be handled cooperatively when they received reports about what was happening in Russia. Peppershire tells Star-Lord she would debrief Unilord on all the occurrences, but she needed to make sure the kids were all safe. Star-Lord asks if there's anything Peppershire wants him to do before he leaves, so she gives him the ring retrieved from her mother to deliver it to Unilord for research purposes. As he and Lady Black start to leave, Shai runs up to Star-Lord to thank him for pushing her during the duel, because if it weren't for his tough love, she wouldn't have survived the battle with Pepesha's mother. Star-Lord looks at her blankly, taking a minute to remember who she is. When he finally recognizes her, he tells her she made herself stronger and she should take credit for her accomplishments. He also tells her to stop saying dim-witted things like, "I'm sorry for making you save me." He leaves without Lady Black, who decides to stay to heal the injured. In the evening, they say their goodbyes and finally leave the orphanage, but not before Natalia and Dr. Isak thank them for saving their lives. The two women walk home together, with Shai saying she feels like there's something Stigma must be after that they don't know about, and Peppershire saying regardless of whatever comes, they were heroes and were prepared for whatever was coming. Peppershire says they should branch out to a bar before getting home, despite all she had drunk previously, confirming the functioning alcoholic allegations. Shai still continues to think about Stigma and his dream that he wants to see come true, even if it means changing the dreams of others. She resolves in her mind that whatever happens, she is indeed ready, and she runs to catch up to Peppershire, who was already calling out to her. In Amarariruku, Stigma consoles Kufufu on her loss of Tzveta, telling her that hearts are eternal, so they will all be together soon. Shai is walking to school in the morning with her best friend Koshikawa, who rambles on about the doll she brought back from Russia, but she stops when she notices Shai is in a low mood, so she asks what is wrong. Shai is evasive about how she feels until she falls flatter than a pancake. Koshikawa helps her up, then calls the school to let them know they would be missing it because Shai has a bad cold. Shai tells her friend to leave her and go to school, but Koshikawa refuses because Shai clearly needs help to even stay upright. Koshikawa gives Shai a piggyback as the baby she truly is taking her all the way home, then goes to buy her things to help with the cold while Shrimpy puts her uniform away. She slips into a dream where a strange woman makes her porridge, and she asks for a back rub, only to wake up suddenly to see Koshikawa watching her. Shrimpy gives Shai her meal to eat alongside some medication, while Koshikawa asks about the object of her dreams. Shai tells Koshikawa it is her dead sister, and they talk about it for a while. Then Shai tells her friend she's at ease when they're together. Eventually, Koshikawa has to leave while Shai thinks about how wonderful her life has been as a superhero with a good community. Back in Amarariruku, Kufufu is fishing for Tzveta when another mutant child comes up to ask about the whereabouts of Stigma, but Kufufu says she doesn't know because she's been fishing. Then somehow she and the other child start fighting until a third person comes between them, saying Stigma has gone to prepare to save the world. Back on human Earth, Stigma goes over his plans to create a new world for himself.